Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 1st, 2019 meeting of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission. We'll call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum present. So our first item would be to approve the minutes of the March 6th, 2019 and April 17th, 2019 Planning Commission meetings. Do we have any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, we will approve those as submitted. And we'll begin tonight with our public hearings. We'll start out just by mentioning, if you haven't been to any of our public hearings before, you will be allowed to come forward to the podium and state your name and speak either for or against the item. You will be limited to 3 minutes. Unless you're representing a group, in which you would then have 5 minutes to speak. So our first public hearing tonight is the annexation plan of services and annexation petition for approximately 3.1 acres located along Shelbyville Pike. Douglas Dales is the applicant, and Ms. Kerr. How are you?
Thank you, Chairperson Jones and members of Planning Commission. The subject property, which consists of a single parcel, is located on Shelbyville Pike, north of Volunteer Road. The subject parcel is approximately 3 acres and contains a single-family home and 2 accessory structures. The property owner has filed a written request to have the subject property annexed into the city limits, and the study area is also located within the city's urban growth boundary and is contiguous with the existing city limits on its north, south, and east boundaries. Staff has prepared a plan of services for the annexation of the property. It has been included in your agenda. It indicates the city will be able to provide services to the subject property upon annexation of services, except for the services of fire. The subject parcel does not currently have access to adequate fire protection. The closest fire hydrant is approximately 1,100 feet to the south of Volunteer Road. The Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue Department requests that if the existing structures are to remain, a fire hydrant must be installed closer to the property prior to the effective date of annexation, or as soon as a second opinion that the structures be removed prior to the effective date of annexation. Of course, fire protection service is a major safety concern, and staff is requesting that this item, as well as the next item for rezoning of the property, item 4B of this property, be deferred until a resolution to the fire protection is determined. Because the public hearing has already been advertised, the Planning Commission will need to conduct a public hearing, after which it will need to discuss this annexation and petition a plan of services. And then the zoning request will also be the next item on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and have our public hearing tonight. So we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak either for or against this request.
Hey, my name is Andy McLean. I live in the subdivision that this house is also a part of, Town and Country Estates. And so I'm not sure how this goes, but I'll just...
And your address is?
Yeah, so my address is, according to our neighborhood covenants of Town and Country Estates, it says that restrictions imposed by at any time houses or properties be altered, omitted, amended, or changed by a record, instrument of writing, agreed to, and signed by the owner or owners of record or 51% of the land in Town and Country Estates. And so there was a time, a period of a few months back, in which someone came around to the residents of our neighborhood requesting that we sign off so that the owner here could, I guess, sell commercially. And so according to just discussions with the neighbors, it didn't seem like they were able to acquire that 51% of the votes or signatures. And so is there, my question is has that been attained? And is this already sort of moving forward commercially? Or is this sort of a formality before that even happens?
Okay, we will take down all of your questions and try to answer those at the end of the public hearing. And this particular public hearing, this first one is in regards to annexing this property into the city limits. So that's what we're going to address first, and then we will have the second public hearing that will address any zoning that would be on the property if it's annexed. And Mr. McLean, if you don't have anything else, what was your address for the record?
Yeah, my address is 146 Volunteer Road.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to speak tonight? Okay, if not, we will close the public hearing and try to address the one question that he's got. If we could have a little more explanation, Ms. Kerr, or not sure who wants to address that.
This application was made by SEC, Mr. Matt Taylor, and I believe he would be able to answer that question.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. My name is Matt Taylor of SEC here in town, and my client has, or the actual seller, not my client, spent several months obtaining that 51% prior to my client putting the contract under, or the property under contract. So it's my understanding that that has been obtained so that we can do this per the restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What other comments or questions from the Planning Commission?
Ms. Kerr, did I understand you to say that you want it deferred, though, based upon, until y'all figure out the whole fire hydrant thing?
Yes, sir, until they can either decide whether they want to install the fire hydrant before the effective annexation date, or they can demolish the homes prior to the effective annexation date. So it will have to come back before you for a vote.
Unless anyone has an objection, I'll make a motion to defer the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will defer the annexation plan of services and annexation petition, and we will move on to the next item, which is the zoning application for approximately 3.1 acres located along Shelbyville Pike to be zoned commercial highway simultaneous with annexation. Five Star Joint Venture is the applicant. Ms. Kerr.
Thank you, Chairperson Jones, and members of Planning Commission. The subject property, again, is located along the west side of Shelbyville Pike and north of Volunteer Road. The property is mostly underdeveloped, but does contain a residence and two structures. The requested parcel totals approximately 3.1 acres. The previous item on the agenda was for the annexation petition and plan of services, which has been deferred until fire protection services have been determined. The applicant is requesting a zoning classification of commercial highway simultaneous with the annexation, and this property lies within the city of Murfreesboro urban growth boundary, and it is currently zoned residential medium density in the unincorporated county. The properties to the north and the south of the property are within the city and are zoned commercial highway and commercial fringe respectively. The adjacent area to the west lies in the unincorporated area and is a single-family residential subdivision, town and country estates. The properties located across the Shelbyville Pike from the property are vacant tracts of land, and they are zoned commercial fringe. Further northeast of the subject property is Walmart on Joe B. Jackson Parkway. The future land use map of the 2035 comprehensive plan, which was adopted in July of 2017, recommends that suburban residential is the most appropriate land use character for the subject property. Also shown on the map, which is included in your agenda, are the characteristics of the suburban residential are compatible with existing residential zones RS-15, RS-12, and RS-10. The proposed zoning is inconsistent with the future land use map of the 2035 comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission should discuss the proposed zoning with regards to the recommendation suburban residential land use character designation and determine if this is an appropriate instance to deviate from the plan's recommendation and whether or not an amendment to the future land use map is warranted. Planning Commission will need to conduct the advertised public hearing, after which you'll need to discuss this rezoning. And again, staff is requesting deferral of this item until resolution for the fire protection services is determined.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a presentation, Mr. Taylor?
I was just going to address the future land use change there. I believe that map was adopted prior to the Murfreesboro Medical Clinic's building being annexed and rezoned, and construction started just to the south of this. And I believe the same thing occurred with the property, I think it's about a 5-acre property directly to the north that was annexed and zoned commercial. I think that both of those have been updated on the future land use map to be commercial. And so we feel like that with those two changes, this one would warrant the change from the suburban residential to a commercial nature likewise. But we do understand the deferral.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will open the public hearing for the zoning application and ask anyone to come forward that would like to speak in regards to the zoning, proposed zoning for this property. Okay. All right, we will close the public hearing then. We have nothing further. And any other comments before we have a motion? Questions?
I'll make a motion, we defer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to item C. We have proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding sections 14 and 22 and charts 1 and 2 pertaining to industrial uses. The City of Murfreesboro Planning Department is the applicant. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As promised, this is our new industrial zoning district, or at least what we're proposing as a new industrial zoning district. It's called General Industrial. It will occupy some space on the zoning chart between light industrial and heavy industrial, and it would give you and the City Council and our applicants a third industrial zoning option. It's similar as proposed to HI, but it removes adult-oriented businesses of all sorts, along with other selected heavy, really truly heavy type uses. So the staff report goes through and lists the ones that are allowed in heavy industrial that would not be allowed in this district. And so things like automobile dismantlers, paper mills, tanneries, those are really intense heavy type uses that would not be permitted in this general industrial district. So along with creating this zoning district, this amendment would also, I think, modernize part of Chart 1 by removing several obsolete uses and then several repetitive type uses. So we have quite a few of those. Candy manufacturing, for example, probably doesn't need its own category when food manufacturing is already in the list. And so we're proposing to take several of those out. So those are the two big parts of this zoning ordinance amendment. We would ask you to conduct a public hearing on it and then make a recommendation to the City Council.
Thank you. So, if there's no other comments or questions, we will open the public hearing for this item and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak.
This is shocking.
Yes. Nobody wants to talk about this. Okay, we will close the public hearing and ask for comments and questions from the Planning Commission.
There are none. I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item, proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding Section 24, Overlay District Regulations, Article 6, CCO, City Core Overlay District, pertaining to expansion of the CCO zoning district. City of Murfreesboro Planning Department is the applicant. Ms. Tomlin.
Good evening, Commission members. The purpose of this zoning ordinance revision is to expand the existing city core overlay. We'll include those areas in the historic bottoms and North Highlands small area studies and implement the recommendations that came out of those studies. We've given a presentation to you all before, so I think you're fairly familiar with this. There was also a presentation made to City Council as well back in the fall. We've done a lot of outreach with this. It went to Historic Zoning Commission just to let them pipe in on it as well. And there was also an open house held here in City Hall to get feedback. Some of that feedback's included in your report here. Tonight, we're asking that you hold the public hearing, discuss this, and make a recommendation to the City Council. We are asking for one caveat in that we've been asked to look at the language again in the single-family development district and just look at the wording we have there and maybe tweak that just a little bit. We'd like the opportunity to do that, but ask that you allow us to go ahead and move this forward to City Council. So you need to hold your public hearing and then make your recommendations.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak in regard to this zoning ordinance change. Big night. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Comments, questions?
I have one, or I guess maybe two, but Ms. Tomlin, I know you all the staff spent a lot of time on this, and thanks for all the work that has gone into it. I think it creates some opportunities and some clarity to how we want the downtown to be developed and the way we want it to look. There were two things in there. We talked about the accessory structure and the dual homes on a single lot, and I think that was withheld from this final product. Did I read that in there?
Yes, we still have some, we'll come back to those, but we feel like we can go ahead and move ahead with what we have and come back. We do have a parking study that will also come back, and whatever we learn from that, if necessary, tweak that as well into the ordinance.
I would add
Go ahead.
that there are a couple of the character areas and pattern areas where we do include currently the language that a duplex does not have to have a shared wall. The accessory units, that's, as Ms. Tomlin referred to, that's one that we have opted at this point not to pursue, accessory units by right. But the language on duplexes is there, and so that would allow basically two individual housing units on a single lot where the underlying zoning is duplex residential. We put that out how many times? Numerous times. And the feedback we got on that was positive. We did not run into anybody who said, no, we don't want to do that. And so we felt comfortable with that one. The accessory units, I think, we're not quite at that same comfort level yet. So that part, we'll come back and revisit that.
And that allowance is not in every development district, but in specific ones.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion for another comments and move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next will be proposed amendment to the subdivision regulations and street design specifications regarding small wireless devices in public rights-of-way. City of Murfreesboro Legal Department is the applicant. Mr. Ives.
I guess that's me tonight. Back about 2 years ago, as the advent of small cells or the small cell infrastructure was being discussed and was being initiated across the country, we prepared an amendment to our city street specifications to regulate how those would be put in the right-of-way. It was becoming clear that the legislature was going to tell us that we had to allow them in the right-of-way, so we put together some regulations on what could go and how it could go. After that, our legislature saw fit to impose regulations that are substantially different from the ones we wrote, and it seems the best thing, and they're enough detailed that it doesn't make sense really to have these in our street specs at this time. So we're simply asking that amendment to the street specs that we adopted back in April of 2017 just be rescinded, taken out of the street specs. Now, there will be coming along an amendment to the zoning ordinance that will cover the small cell installations on private property, on city property that is not right-of-way, and we're also, because the regulations will be the same, excuse me, we're going to cover implications or in the right-of-way in the same ordinance. That'll be somewhat unusual because, for the most part, our zoning ordinance does not address street right-of-way. It addresses private property, but it seems to us not to make sense to have two different regulations for what's going to be the same thing, and so we will have that coming to you for review and discussion in the next month or so, I believe. But for now, we thought it good to just get this one out of our street specs so that we don't have conflicting rules that conflict with state law.
Okay, thank you. So we will open the public hearing on this item and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak. Again, we will close the public hearing, ask for comments and questions and/or a motion from the Planning Commission.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding Section 24, Planned Signage Overlay District, pertaining to eligible zones and uses for PSO zoning. City of Murfreesboro Building and Codes Department is the applicant. Mr. Holtz.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. My name is Robert Holtz. I'm the Director of the Building and Codes Department, and I'm trying to figure out how to do a PowerPoint while I talk to you. Here we go. This is a 120-slide PowerPoint I have for you tonight. Just kidding. What we have tonight really are two changes. One is to the PSO plan signage overlay. The second one that you'll read here in a minute we'll talk about is to do with the sign ordinance, but they really both are very similar in that they deal with institutional group assemblies. But let me talk about what the PSO allows currently. In June of 2006, the Planning Commission and City Council approved a planned signage overlay district, which was created to allow new and innovative signs on large atypical developments and to encourage design and development of higher quality signage that is customary under signage regulations or otherwise applicable. The PSO overlay district requires that the lot be 20 acres or more, that is zoned CH, HI, or a planned development, or in any of the GDO districts. So if you're over 20 acres and you are in one of those zoning districts, you can apply for a planned sign overlay district. What we're planning to, or proposing to change is to eliminate HI and LI and substitute in there industrial development. So that'll include the new G1 or GI that Don will talk to you about tonight. So HI, LI, and GI will all be included. And then the other one is to include institutional group assemblies, the opportunity to apply for a PSO. If you don't know what an institutional group assembly is, I'll refresh your memory out of the zoning ordinance. It's any building, structure, or land for which a primary use is use as a place of assembly or 50 or more persons. Institutional group assembly uses include, but are not limited to, recreational fields, public buildings, public or private school grades K to 12, lodges, country clubs, churches, clubs, and other places of worship. So we will allow, if they're on a lot of 20 acres or more, and you're an institutional group assembly, to apply for a PSO. The reason for this change, most schools, churches typically are consist of large buildings with multiple entrances, large parking areas. Sometimes they have multiple buildings on a single lot. Recreational fields, we've all been to the ball fields on the weekends with our kids. They have multiple fields, multiple buildings surrounded by large parking lots. So by allowing them to apply for a PSO, they can get additional signage as needed to direct people using those facilities to the appropriate building, to the appropriate field, to the appropriate entrance. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Holtz? All right, we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak about this item. And we will close the public hearing. Comments, questions?
I'm assuming if someone came to y'all to apply for this, that the conversation would be the intent of having the ability to have additional signage is more from a directional standpoint than from an advertising standpoint. I mean, is that the conversation that's going to be had or not?
We have several PSOs right now, the avenues,
Right.
The fountains, the hospital. The process is we have a pre-planned meeting where they come in, they talk, make proposal on what signage they want to have. So the conversation could include more attached signage, more ground signs. Normally what we do is we stir them in the direction of what the sign ordinance allows, maybe a little larger signage, but a better quality signage. But it's kind of a negotiated process we go through. That plan booklet will come to Planning Commission for y'all's review and approval. But we don't just willy-nilly open the doors.
Right.
It's a good process to work through. I worked through on the fountains. I'm well pleased with what they got.
Does the fountains have the ability, or any of the current members that have one of these licenses or designations, do they have the ability to go out and sell space on that sign that somebody else could have put their logo on that sign if they wanted to? Meaning that, you know, if the Avenue wanted to sell space on that sign, for instance, to one of their tenants in the Avenue, do they have the ability to do that? Would they have the ability to do that?
On some of their signage, they do. Now, they have a plan booklet that shows where routing signs may be located where they can sell space to a tenant. That would just direct them
Okay.
to where that tenant is. Those are more interior to the property.
But no advertising necessarily?
Not necessarily advertising, but more direction.
Okay.
They could ask to revise their booklet to include that, but I'm sure we would try to keep them focused just on advertising the avenue on the front, and then more in the back would become the routing signs and similar signs.
Thank you.
It's an interesting question, though. What about like the flags, the banner flags? Can they sell advertisement on those?
They could, I think Stones River Mall, you say sell advertising, it's usually advertising for a tenant there. I think like they've used J.C. Penney's on some of their pennant signs before.
I don't think we've had one set up where they could put, sale at Toys R Us or something of that nature. I don't think they've done that. They can have a tenant's name or logo on it, but I don't think we've had any where they put messages of that sort on the pennants.
Yeah. We haven't had anybody ask for that. We haven't seen it. If that's what you're talking about, sales and stuff like that, no, we would discourage that type of use.
I guess what we're saying is that if the sign itself is approved, we're not really approving the message on that sign, whether it be a message or if it's a company name or whatever. We have approved, maybe it's a flag sign or maybe it's a attached sign or.
We have a tough time regulating the message.
Yeah.
We can when it comes to off-premise advertising or obscenity and things like that, but it's hard to regulate the actual message they're delivering, except in those two instances. But we do it through the plan booklet. In fact, in the fountains, they had several different pendant signs they wanted to use. One was for Christmas, one was for, I think, hockey games they were going to have televised there, and some other things. But none of them were hamburgers half off or anything like that. It was pretty upscale, if that answers y'all's questions.
Any other comments or questions?
If none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so then we have item G, which is proposed amendments to the sign ordinance regarding sections 25.2 and 25.2 to 25, 25.2 to 26, pertaining to, I'm sure I didn't read that right, pertaining to building entry signs, banners, and institutional group assembly uses, City of Murfreesboro Building and Codes Department. Applicant, and again, Mr. Holtz.
Yes, thank you again. The change you have before you is to currently, if a institutional group assembly is applying for a sign, they're limited to the signage based on what the property zoned. A lot of churches are zoned residential, similar to maybe some schools, and so as you can imagine, residential zoning is very restrictive when it comes to signage. So we have a lot of institutional group assemblies that are really struggling because they're very big, big buildings, lots of entrances, big parking lots. They struggle with getting their visitors to the proper parking lots and entrances. So what we've asked to do is to pull out institutional group assemblies that are on 5 or more acres and put them in their own category, regardless of what zone they're in. So I'll go through some of the changes that will occur because of this. One of the first changes we're proposing is pennant signs. Currently, they're permitted to be 9 square feet. One pennant sign is permitted for every 50 lineal foot of road frontage, and they can be attached to private light poles. Pennant signs are allowed in all zones except residential zones. So the proposed change we have before you will increase the size to 15 square feet when located on a lot of 10 acres or more, so a large facility. Would be allowed on lots that are used as institutional group assemblies that are on lots of 5 acres or more. So if you take a church or a school that's on 6 acres, they'd be allowed 9 square foot pennant signs. If it happens to be on an 11 acre lot or bigger than 10 acres, they could go to the larger 15 square foot pennant signs. But this change would also apply to all other uses that are allowed to have pennant signs based on the 5 acres, 9 square foot. So here's some examples we took of pennant signs around town. Those two both are under 9 square foot. In some of these pictures, it looks like the one that shows the larger square footage is actually smaller, the one with the smaller square footage, but some are mounted higher. We took these pictures from about 10 foot away from the light pole, so the distance is the same, it's just the height is different. And then here's 2 more. These are both approaching the 15 square feet. The one on the left is 12, and the one on the right is 11 square feet. The Jazz Fest signs you see on the right are pretty low to the ground. These over here are higher up, so it just looks smaller. But that's the size difference we're talking about. It's not extreme. In large parking lots, a lot of property owners will use those to identify different parking areas. So, and as I said, we're going to break out institutional group assemblies separate. And some of the additional signage I have highlighted at the bottom of this slide. They'll be allowed to have building entry signage, which is a new type of sign we'll discuss here in a minute. They'll be allowed to have routing signs, and those are signs that go at the interior of the property at intersections. They'll be allowed to have building material signs and development ID signs that go at the entrances. Development ID signs are little monumental wall signs, if you will. They're pretty small, low to the ground, brick, stone. You'll see them at a lot of entrances to subdivisions and apartments. Signage that will not be permitted in institutional group assembly uses are outline lighting, strip lighting. We tried to be sensitive to the lighting level. As was said before, they're usually close or in residential zoning. So most of the lighting we've tried to keep to low-level lighting, either channel letters or indirect lighting. Now, institutional group assemblies that are in lots of less than 5 acres would remain unchanged, and that signage would still depend upon the zoning that group assembly is in. Here's some examples of a building entry sign. That's the new sign I mentioned. They're allowed to be 10 square feet maximum. We're going to allow one at each entrance, primary entrance. And it's just to identify where a gymnasium may be, a sanctuary, the Sunday school rooms, the theater. That's what these signs will be used for. They'll either be channel letters or indirect lighting. We defined it, so it's a new definition, as an attached sign that is located near a primary pedestrian entrance of a building that identifies the interior uses of the building that are accessible from that entrance. The sign is not included in the total number of attached signage. So, does all that make sense? If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
What was the building materials?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
If it's a sign, Harley Davidson has one. They have EFS, and they have a specialty sign built into the material.
I'm with you.
So that's what a building material sign is. It's they can be very nice. I think it's the only one I'm aware of. I don't know if you're aware of any more.
I know at least a couple of people talked about doing them, but I'm not aware of anyone who did, or anyone else who did.
I think Harley Davidson so far is the only one I know of that has one.
So if you cast a logo in concrete and had it as part of the building material?
Yeah, yeah, they had the styrofoam cut for the Harley Davidson emblem, and then they just built it in, I think it seems the same color as the adjacent wall. It doesn't stand out much.
Okay, any other questions, or we will open the public hearing and see if anybody would like to come forward to speak on this item. And if not, we will close the public hearing and see if we have any further questions or comments.
There are none. I'll make a motion we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that ends our public hearings for this evening, and we move on to staff reports and other business. We do have an item under here, mandatory referral to consider the dedication of a portion of a pump station easement on city-owned property north of West Thompson Lane and east of Leanna Road as part of the Caroline Farms development. Caroline Farms LLC is the applicant. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairperson Jones and members of the Planning Commission. The one mandatory referral that we have on tonight's agenda is in conjunction with the development of the Caroline Farms single-family residential subdivision, which is located on the north side of West Thompson Lane. We actually have the plat on our counter, and we are anticipating that being signed very shortly. A mandatory referral item to be taken care of in conjunction with that development. There has been a pump station installed on the city-owned property that's commonly known as the Jordan Farm, that is along the east side of Leanna Road. The Jordan Farm directly abuts the Caroline Farm subdivision, and if you'll see on the, we could put up the aerial photo, you'll see the area where site is pointed to is actually where the pump station has been installed. And Caroline Farms is a little bit to the south and to the east of the pump station. So because the pump station has been installed on city-owned property, there's been a pump station easement that is proposed to be recorded with the Section 1 plat. The pump station easement would entail a real estate transaction on the city-owned property, the Jordan Farm. So we bring this to you tonight for consideration of a mandatory referral for the dedication of this pump station easement on the city-owned property. I will mention that according to the Water Resources Department, it's envisioned that this pump station will actually just be a temporary pump station. The Cherry Lane Sewer Master Plan actually calls for the construction of a pump station further to the north that would be more of a regional pump station that would accommodate sewer on a larger scale. And when that pump station is constructed, it would make this pump station unnecessary and it would be abandoned. But with that being said, for the time being, the pump station is needed, and we would ask that you consider this mandatory referral to record the pump station easement on the city-owned property. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
There are none. I'll make a motion we approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And I believe we do have one other item of business. Mr. Anthony?
I do. Actually, I have three very quick things.
Three. Okay.
Two quick things and then one
Sure.
slightly
Go
extended
ahead.
thing. First, I think sitting back here behind me, I hate to put her on the spot and embarrass her, but Teresa Stevens has been hired as the city's new sign administrator, so you may see her from time to time. She brings a world of knowledge and experience, and she is awesome, and I think you'll like her very much. So you'll probably run into her from time to time.
And she
so.
was the first one in the room tonight.
See, that's a great first
There you
impression,
go.
isn't it? The second thing I want to tell you, staff retreat timing, I'm going to continue to work on that. I'm going to push that out probably just a little bit until later in the summer, because I don't know why I expect that you all can just drop whatever you're doing and show up when I ask you to. Why won't people just cooperate? No, I want to give you a little bit more notice to try to help people out with their schedules. So we're going to push that probably until August, September, sometime like that, and I'll send out some more dates here within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
My final item is for other business, a site plan for St. Thomas Hospital temporary parking lot, which I passed out a packet of 3 sheets just right before our meeting. Our friends at St. Thomas have acquired a 5-acre site that's located at 950 North Thompson Lane. So this is just on the northwest side of the hospital. For context of where it is in relation to the hospital, if you flip to that second page, I tried to sort of call it out and show it to you. As you know, the hospital is, as hospitals do, currently undergoing an expansion project. And they have a temporary gravel parking lot on that 5-acre site. They need to expand that in order to provide more parking for their construction crew as well as for hospital staff. They do show some walkways there that would connect the hospital back to that site. We think that this is a necessary thing, and so we would, as staff, definitely support it. We'd recommend approval of the site plan or the construction facilities plan subject to 3 conditions, which I've listed on the 3rd page, and I'll just read those quickly into the record. Number 1, the applicant shall remove all gravel from the site prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the hospital expansion project. Number 2, upon the removal of the gravel, the applicant shall return the lot to a clean and green state in accordance with zoning ordinance requirements. And number 3, if any trees are to be preserved, the applicant shall provide a tree survey to planning department staff. Protective measures shall be taken to ensure that the trees are undisturbed. That's all I have for that. Again, we would recommend approval of this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Not that there would be an issue with this, but would there, being who we are dealing with and that being the hospital, but I mean, there's no reason to have a time limit with respects to this, having the gravel there for You know what I mean?
No, they're going to want to get their expansion up and running as soon as possible, and
this-
so if this is tied to the completion of that,
All right.
Get their C of O until the, I was glad to see that. They can't get the C of O until the gravel's been removed.
Oh, of the, I see. I'm with you. Yeah, okay, that makes
So,
sense.
They can put it there, but then as soon as the project is finished and ready to go, if they want their certificate of occupancy,
Right.
they've got to make
Okay.
sure all the gravel's removed. And I guess at the same time, they would also be trying to return the lot to a clean and green state.
exactly.
Chairwoman Jones, I need to ask Mr. Ives if I should not participate, given that my employer is Turner Construction and they're involved in the,
I think the safest course would be for you to recuse and not vote on this issue, since you have had a relationship with the hospital that someone could potentially see as a conflict. So, thank you.
Okay.
No further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention? Okay. All right. Do we have any other business tonight?
I have none.
Okay. All right. Thank y'all very much. We stand adjourned. Let's see. Okay.